Hey guys, we got an awesome another installment video for you. This is going to be part 2 out of 4, and let me get into it really quick. I'm not going to babble mamble around, but pretty much what this video is a PC build. I'm not going to go in depth about the parts, about the performance of any of that stuff. I'm just going to talk about the parts we have, how they fit together, and any gotchas. But pretty much let me get everything together and we will get this build rocking and rolling. Hey guys, I want to drop a couple bombs real quick. I'm going to be using a couple different parts here. I'm going to be using an i5-9400F instead of the i3-9100. They are compatible. You can just swap them. There's no problems. Same thing with the GPU. I'm using a 1660 Ti versus the 1650. That is the $500 build. Would be that i3-9100 and that 1650 NVIDIA graphics card. It is fine to order different graphics cards and use them. The 1650 won't have any power plugs, and the i3 is just pretty much swappable. You do the exact same thing I do in the build. Alright guys, I don't want to waste anybody's time, so I'm going to get right into this. I'm not going to do unboxing or anything. Get your RAM out, your 2 sticks. You're going to need this wonderful DDR4 PC3000 OLO 16 gigabit kit. That's 2x8 kit. You're going to need your CPU heatsink, and this does not have thermal paste on it, so I will be showing you guys how to apply thermal paste. Get your processor out of the box, you know, your wonderful i3-9100. This is actually an i5-9400F. And a couple things out of your box of your motherboard. So first off, come and open your motherboard, and you're going to want the motherboard itself. This wonderful, beautiful guy in its anti-static bag. You're going to want to grab this guy out. And everything else in the motherboard you can leave in there for right now, but if you want to get prepared, then the only other thing you're going to need is this I/O shield. Set this off to the side for later. And then plop this top of this box open, and you're going to grab yourself out a SATA cable. And everything else in here you're not going to need. Now one thing, since I want to talk about this really quick, check that you have your M.2 screw. It's going to be a really tiny screw. Looks like that. It's an M.2 screw, and yeah, if you got that, just keep that in your board and you're good to go. Keep this box around. Don't throw this out, because you're going to have some parts that you're going to need to put back in here, or a part. It's especially if you have to RMA something. If you do not have this part, they will not accept the motherboard. So we can take this box and throw it out of the way. We do not need it no more. There's nothing in there that can break, but you know. So we got our manual, and let's get into this. So go ahead and take this out of your anti-static bag, and how most memory is going to go on boards. I'm going to step right into this. You can set the static bag down, anti-static bag down here, so you got something to set the motherboard on. Pretty much it usually skips a slot. So from the right side of the CPU slot, it won't use this one, it's going to jump one. You look in the manual for your motherboard, or if you have this exact manual, you're going to put, if you got dual sticks, which I suggest you do because that's the best thing for these processors for gaming, you're going to populate these 2 sticks. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to come over here and we are going to grab our RAM. And do this out of the PC case because it's just so much easier to do. I see people that put their motherboard in and they don't put the heatsink in and all this other stuff. It just makes life so much harder. So you got your sticks of RAM. Now you're going to look at your board and you're going to see there's going to be a short side and a tall side. So take your RAM and, you know, set the board back down. Take your RAM and actually look at it. See how there's a long side down here? You might not be able to see it, but I'll let the zoom get in there. See how this side is long on the bottom and short on the top? So flip this around. This is going to be going towards the top of the motherboard. And how I'm looking at the top of the motherboard is, if you look, see all the writing on here, how it's facing? That's the top of the motherboard. And then we're going to go ahead and stick our first stick of RAM in. So we don't want these 2 slots right here. We want slot, I'll call it B. And you're going to slot it in there and make sure you hear click, click. This does not have the double clicky thing, so you might only hear a single click. And this sticker is going to face towards the CPU. So I can see that the tall side's up. And we'll come to this very last slot, slot D, or slot 4, depending on what your motherboard says. And there we go. Our RAM is now installed. We can take a look and see that it's all the way seated. It is, and we're good to go. All right, so now we're going to move on to the CPU. Couple steps. Be very careful around this socket. there are a bunch of little itty bitty pins in here that are very easy to bend. So don't drop stuff. If you got this open, you know, first you should keep this closed like this. Come over here, get your processor out. That way if you drop it like that, you don't bend any pins. So, you know, you're good to go. So pretty much pop this bad mamma jamma open, and then you're gonna have writing on this. If you see, I don't know if you guys can see that. There's writing on this processor. I'll kind of bend it for the light, but the writing is going upward. It's gonna match the same writing on the board, and the processor is gonna fit just like that. So let's go ahead and lift this door open, and let's be very gentle. I'm holding by the edges. I'm gonna drop this in very gentle, and you'll feel it. It won't, you know, you'll feel it. It'll kind of like, it slots in there. If it comes off like this, just take your time and get a hold of it, pick it back up and move it over. Don't try to slide the processor across these pins. So the part that I'm talking about that you want to save is this thing that's about to pop out as soon as I lock this in. So I'm going to go ahead and put my pressure on here, and then that piece will come flying off. Do not throw this away. If you ever have motherboard problems and you're within your warranty period, you throw this chunk of plastic away, they will not take the motherboard back. I say save these too, you know, so if you have to RMA your motherboard, you got some protection for your CPU. And see how I just dropped something there? If that socket was open, that could have bent the pin. You know, I got butterfingers, guys. It just happens. So I'm going to show you how to apply thermal paste here. I'm not going to pull a verge and put a whole tube on the die. So I'm just going to grab some of the Super Zymals grease. I prefer Thermaltake grease or Thermal Grizzly, but this is just a demonstration. I'm going to be taking this back apart after it's all done demonstrating for you guys, because I have other builds planned and other parts that might interchange. So when you're applying thermal grease, I don't know if you guys can see this, but you're going to come into the middle, and how I like to do it is you do a P shape. So get your hand around here, and it's not a ton. That's about a P shape, and then you're good. Now you could sit here and move this around. I sometimes, because I like to have the whole die touching the other die, but if you look at this guy, this is a circle die. So the P shape's going to work perfect for this. Other heat sinks and stuff like that are going to have a larger die. You can actually add a little bit, just a very small amount on the corners, just so it gets, you know, a good grip on this. The other thing to do is download a hardware monitor and look and make sure your temperatures are sitting pretty. So it's the same thing with this cooler. There's an Intel. This is going to be facing up. And you can look at all these feet and make sure that the little black knobby in here isn't pushed through, otherwise it won't snap into this actual board. So we're going to come here, line this guy up, get it lined up for these, and then we're pretty much going to pick the board up and snap in one corner, snap in the other, and then I'm getting my hand underneath the board right here so I can support it. Snap in this corner, and then snap in this corner, and then it should be good to go. As long as these aren't unlocked. This one was actually unlocked, so I'm going to pull this back up. And it should come where it's all set up already, and see how it's snapped in. And as long as the arrow point is turned to the back, and you can see it, they're all snapped in. It looks good. It's seated correctly. You can take a look at it and actually look down at it. It's really hard to see with a camera, but if you look, you could see between there that it's seated to the actual processor. So now we're going to unwind this cable. They stick it in with the fan and get this unwound. So I like to keep cabling as neat as possible, as tight as possible for airflow. And if you look up here, it says CPU fan. CPU fan, and that's right where it's going to go. So we are going to choose the CPU fan, and these little knobbies on here are going to go towards the little lip of plastic that's up. I'll turn this sideways so my zoom can see it. But there's a little plastic thing right here, and that's a PWM mount, and then we'll just get this so it's nice and tucked and out of the way. All right, guys, so that is the motherboard is pretty much finished, and this is ready to put into the case. All right, guys, we got the PC case up here. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to get this side off, and we're going to take these 4 thumb screws off and get this plexiglass side off, put these off to the side, and whatnot. So you grab it right here, pull back, and then of course discard it. One thing I want to talk about this case before we get into it, to make it easier, I'm going to pull these flaps off just so it makes it easier for handling this case. And you can go ahead and take the back off if you want to, getting rid of extra weight. Take your 4 screws, set them off to the side so you know where they are. You don't want to lose any of this stuff. A couple things about this case I want to explain really quick is this right in here. This guy right in here. I don't know if my zoom camera can see that. Depending on the motherboard you have, is going to be which slots that you put these standoffs, which are right here. These standoffs in there. There are 2 standoffs that have a little lip that come up to secure the motherboard into the I/O shield. First thing I'm going to come in here and do is grab this bag. You're going to have to clip it. I already have it out, so make sure you got a clippers handy, especially if you're going to do wire management down the road later. You're going to have zip ties and stuff like that, so go ahead and get your parts and stuff like that. All these parts right here that you see on this side are going to come in this baggie. I already have them out laid out for you guys. This little silver guy, it's a Phillips to 1/4, and that's for the standoffs. And otherwise you won't be able to get these standoffs in. They are really tight. This is a 3-to-1 fan adapter that can go on the motherboard. It goes from 1 header on the motherboard to 3 case fans, and this will allow 1 motherboard header to control 3 fans. This does not come with the case. This is something I will have in the description down below for you guys, and I would say you probably want to pick it up. I think you only need 2 if I'm not mistaken, so if you want to get a 2-splitter, but I just buy the 3, and if I have an extra wire, I have an extra wire. And then of course all our front panel connectors are tied up right here. So I'm going to just pop these up and out of the way so they're out of our way, and they are just going to be hanging in the back of the case right here. And you just right here, just keep them so they're out of our way of our motherboard tray. We will be feeding them through when we need to actually plug them in later on down the road. So I got everything cleared out of here, and then of course I am going to lay this guy on its side because it's going to be the easiest and simplest way to put the standoffs in. As you can see in here from the above and everything, we have a bunch of standoffs we have to put in here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my little adapter and get my magnetic bit Phillips, and this will hold on to it, which is kind of nice. And I'm going to grab 2 standoffs. And as I said, I'm going to go to all the M's. And if you look at the motherboard, we have one that's a little bit different that I want to show you guys. It's down right here, and it has 2 that are M's. You're going to need 8 standoffs in total, but if you were to put 2 more in here, that would be 9. Our motherboard is actually in the lower one. So I'll just come here and take one and just get it started, and that's it. The ones back here, no matter what motherboard, they're always going to be there for the PCIEs. So I'm going to come and just start them. And guys, I'm probably going to time lapse this, so let me get all these standoffs in, and then we'll get into the motherboard putting in. Make sure that these are facing downward. The SATA connections and power connections, the SATA power, are facing downward. So when the drive goes in, it needs to go like that. I will probably time lapse this, but you will see me putting this in. It takes these little rubber gaskets that look like this, and the screws are separated from it. So there's a screw that has a flat, and then it's threaded, and then it actually goes with this little rubber thing that looks like that. So go ahead and stick all these guys in these little holes back here, and then you push over. All right guys, I'm going to time lapse this. All right, guys. So the next thing we are going to put in is this I/O cage. And this is this guy right here. So if we look at the motherboard, we can take this and match it up and see which way it goes. And the motherboard's going to go in like that. So the top of this needs to go to the top on here. So I'm going to come in here, and I usually get the bottom in first, get it kind of lined up, and make sure you push it on the edges, not on the centers. And you're going to have to go around the whole thing and snap it in. Make sure it's in there, and then when you look at it, I'll get up close here with the GoPro, but you look at it, it should look snapped in all the way. So if you come down this side, and this actually looks like it's like that, I'm going to show you. See how that's not pushed all the way in, you got to actually snap it in. So you push on that side and work your way all the way down. Just make sure that that's in there properly, otherwise you are going to have major problems trying to get your motherboard in all the way where all them little knobbies around the whole thing are showing. You're gonna have issues. We're gonna get the motherboard in, and this is a pretty easy thing to do. I always grab the motherboard by this heatsink. This is a favorite spot to grab it. And then I like to slot it in like this, then I get it level. Actually, I always make sure the I/O port is facing towards the back of the case. Just come in, my arm's probably in the way, and then you wanna actually dive in on an angle, so you take the board in and it goes in like this. Otherwise they have little thingies that will catch on the ports. And what I'm talking about is like these ports in here, they'll have little things that slide in there and they'll actually short out on your USB stuff. So you want to make sure that if there are any ones that are like that, that they're all above everything, and it looks like they're above, and then we're good to go. But you screw the motherboard down. It's as simple as that. So usually I go for a middle screw first, like this guy right here. Oop. And I get it kind of snug, and then I back it off a little bit. Leave all 8 of your screws loose until your motherboard is, if you know all your screws are in first. If something's not lining up, stop what you're doing and observe and see if anything is misaligned, or any of these ports are, there's plates sticking in them. If you have a standoff in the wrong position, anything like that. All right, guys, we're going to get right into this. So, like I said, I'm not unboxing things, so I already have things unboxed. This is a modular 450 watt Corsair power supply. Get this guy unboxed. It's going to have some plugs. I'm just going to go over the wires that you're going to need for this specific build. There should be some screws. If not, the case comes with extra screws that work just right for this, but grab the extra screws. You have those. First thing you're going to need, if you have a graphics card that is plugged in, you're going to need one of these 8 to 6 pin PCIe adapter cards. Pretty simple. It plugs into the power supply, then plugs into the graphics card. Second thing you're going to need, this is to hook up your hard drive or SSD. This is a SATA cable. Third thing you're going to need, this is a SATA power cable. This will have a 6 pin that plugs into the power supply with SATAs going all the way down it. So you put these off to the side, and then of course you need your power cable to plug the actual PSU in. One other thing, you're going to want to make sure you have some zip ties. I'm going to do wire management last. You might have to unplug some stuff, move some stuff around, but go ahead, and that bag you pulled out of the case should have some, and your power supply might have some. Get these off to the side. We're going to eventually need those. And then last but not least, I already told you guys about this. This is that fan splitter cable. So let's dig right into this. I'm going to get these cables out of our way off to the side. first we got to prepare to get the power supply into this case. And how we do that is we have to take these 4 screws off. And there's an actual, it's like a mount bracket that holds onto the power supply. So put these screws off to the side, grab that one I lost right there, and then we have a bracket. So I'm going to flip this around and let you see with the GoPro. We have this bracket that comes right out. And of course, this is the bracket that we just took out. This is the end that faces towards the outside of the power supply. This is the end that actually holds onto the power supply. And then there's a lip on here. So that lip, we're going to line up with the fan side and then flip this around so the fan is actually facing down. And you can see there's holes that line up on here. You'll have these 2 little dots right here, or not dots, but indents. We want that facing up. We will grab these extra screws and pour this out, then use our magnetic tip bit. And there's 4 screws that go in here, and snug them on up. And the power supply is now in its bracket, and that's what that looks like. We want this fan to be down, so the writing like that is upwards, and there's ventilation that'll allow it to suck from the bottom. So the writing up, you're just gonna simply go in here and stick your hand in from the back, like right here, kind of support it, and then you're in. And we should see all our holes are lining up. I'm just gonna get some screws started with my hands. That is the power supply installed. First thing I'm gonna do is grab these cables, kind of untie them. And the reason I'm doing this is just to get these out of my way. I'm just gonna pull these out so they're up and out of my way. We are gonna do those, but first I'm gonna do the front panel connectors. I'm gonna flip around here so you guys can see. So our first cable is gonna be this USB 3.0. Our header is right here. So let's see what our easiest path of least resistance is. Is that it right there? That looks pretty good. So let's plug that guy in there. There's a little notch on here if you look. I don't know if you guys can see that little notch right there. That's gonna go towards the notch on the top right there. And you gotta kind of guide it. It's kind of a tight one. So you might have to wiggle it back and forth, kind of wiggle it in, and there we go. It is now in there. And let's look at the next cable. So we have a front panel high def cable, which is this guy right here. I can actually get this HD cable through right here, and that's going to bring me right next to where I need to be. And this is keyed. There's one, so if you count from this right side, there's 1, and then missing, and then 2. And then our front audio cable is now in there. And these are our 2 fan cables. So this looks like this would fit nice and good with a zip tie, but we're going to have more cables that actually fit on here. I'm not going to do a big wire management. I'm actually going to time lapse the wire management, but just to have everything connected, just for craps and giggles, I'm going to have everything connected. One of these is going to have 4 pins. So pick the one with 4 pins and actually put that on one of these fan connectors. And the reason you want that is because it's going to sense. That's going to be the sense cable. And then the rest of these will have actual less pins. They'll only have 3. So that's that connected. And now we're going to feed this through to the other side, but let's look first and let's see where a good system fan port is, where it's not going to be in the way of anything. Let's see if I can come either up and over. So I'm going to come around here, and it's got that tab just like the CPU fan, and we push it in and push our excess cable, and then there we go. And the reason we're doing this with these cables is so the least amount of cables are around this front. And if these cables are really short, you could get your 24 pin, and then we got a cable that, the 8 pin that goes up there, and you don't want these cables draped across. So the first thing I'm gonna do is there's this big hole right here, and I'm gonna pop. So we got this hole right here. I'm gonna plop this through and feed them through so that this actually fits through nice and neat. And it's not all kinked up. It's wanting to kink on me. And we'll get it through. And that way we have these through. And then what we're gonna do is we know our 24 pins right here. We could either come right here, which it's going to interfere with our SATA cables, or we could come from right here and it looks good. So what I'm going to do is come here and feed this guy through. And then the snappity side, it's actually going to have to bend. Don't worry if you have to bend this cable, bend it nice and neat. And this is going to be a hard one to get in. You might have to go side to side with it. If you can put your thumb and I just heard it click. And you can actually feel on both sides to feel that the cable's in all the way. And then our 24 pin is in. The hardest one to do, some people like to put this in before the motherboard, but as long as you got a case with enough room and you can snake it around, that's that guy right there. And the pin is on the top. So that little locking pin like that is going to go to the top. So we're going to come around and then we're going to make sure that that locking pin is upward. I feed a bunch of cables so it's easy to snap in and then push back side to side and then feed this cable back through so it's on the other side. So now we have the system fan cable, which is this guy right here. There's one right here, nice and neat. This is going to be one that I'm probably going to put a zip tie on right away, just so it's up and out of my way. So you can see all the cable right there, squinches together. So what I'm going to do is grab one of these zip ties and I'm going to pre-fold it. So fold it once, fold it twice. There we go. Just so that's up and out of the way. This is where the snips come in handy. You get nice and close and snip it and pull the cable back through. And make sure you don't let these cables kink. It's right there. That's latched in. And this is the SATA power. And we're going to look on the power supply. One side says peripheral, another one says 6.2 and 8, and 4+4. So we want a peripheral. I'm going to go to the bottom, and the clasp is on the bottom, and plug that guy in. So come around here, and everything looks like a giant mess. So I'm going to say with management, get everything plugged in and kind of through the holes you think you're going to go through, and you're going to probably have to go through these cables again. This is just how I do it to get them all nice and neat. And we still forgot the front panel connector. I'll do that one last. But pretty much come here, and this is going to have to come through this hole right here. And then we're going to need this guy to come through this hole right here. On this side, you're going to have one cable that snaps in. And then right next to it, you're going to have the power that snaps in. And then there you go. Those two are done. And we'll do the front panel really quick here, which all the front panels are right here. So we're going to come back around and find our front panel connector right here. You can see how these become a tangled, mess of lines. And then this is where we're going to need our motherboard's manual. And your motherboard might be different than ours, but if you look, it tells you all your panels. So if you turn it like this, so I'm going to follow this. So we got HDD LED positive. So we're going to look on here. And we got power LED, power switch, HDD LED. So our positive is pin 1 and pin 3. And then our next one on top of that is power LED. And then they actually have them split because sometimes it's different on the motherboard, so that positive and negative do matter. If you don't plug them in right, the lights won't light up. So the positive is the first one and the negative is the second one. And that's the reset switch, and then here is the power switch. And it's nice to have all these cables tucked in and away. And get this through the other side and get it plugged in. And these are all the cables you're going to need for this build. Unless you add more hard drives or anything like that, you're not going to need any more cables than this. So guys, I'm going to put the GPU in. Before I do any cable management or any craziness, I'm going to make sure this posts first. The one thing I forgot to tell you guys about is take this door in the back off right here. Not all PCs are going to be like this, but this has this little goofy door that pops out. Just discard that and put that off to the side. And then we are going to feed our GPU in. It's going to go in this top slot. That's a 16X. Make sure it's lined up. Give it a good amount of pressure. And then click. It's now in. And we are going to have to put 2 screws right here. All right, guys, after you get the GPU in, you got to get this plate in, go ahead and put the plate in. Get your holes lined up, and then drive number 1 home. Leave it just a little bit loose, and get your top guy in. Now put a little bit of pressure upwards and snug them up. And now they're both snugged up. And then we can drive home this extra rear plate to hold the GPU in. And that is the GPU is done. Other than the power plug that has to go in. So I'm going to come back around here and grab the PCIe power plug. And let's see. So it's probably going to be best right here. One thing I did is I put a zip tie right here to hold these together. Because a lot of GPUs that will have, it'll require 2 8-pins or a 4-pin and an 8-pin. Or a 6-pin and an 8-pin. And the plug for this goes towards the bottom. And right now, in the current configuration, if I hooked up a monitor, this should post. So that's what I'm going to do, because I don't like putting the case and the sides and everything on. I'm going to hook up a monitor quick, make sure it posts. The last portion of this video is going to be showing the wire management through here, because you don't want to leave it like this. I mean, you could just cram it in there. It's got a cover. Nobody's going to ever see it. But you might as well make it at least halfway neat. And this is where I'm talking about you might have to unplug stuff, you know, switch the cable around, plug it back in. This is just how I like to do it. You know, people have their different methods of how they like to do this. We're going to get a post test really quick. All right, guys, we're going to do a quick post test with this. And this is to make sure all and everything is all right. So I already went and plugged everything in. One thing to make sure you guys note is that you're not plugging into this top graphics card right here. I'll have my zoom guy zoom into this really quick. So you're not plugging into this, you're plugging in down to the GPU. All right, so reposition this so everybody can see it. And our power button's right here. As long as I didn't do a whoopsie and flip stuff around or have something not plugged in correctly. Hopefully we are not going to let the pixies out. We want all the pixies to stay inside all of this mama jama. Well, the fans are spinning. That's a good sign. And there we go. So our power button's working. And let's see if we get a good post. There we go. So this is a good post. Missing operating system, that's fine. I'm not going to do the installed operating system. That will be the next video where I'm going to be doing the installed operating system and drivers install. All right, guys, we're going to get right into this. We are going to clean this spaghetti up. So we're going to grab some zip ties and we're going to get into this bad mamma jamma. Turn this guy towards you a little bit. So you can see down here we got some cables. And the best way I like to do is take these and kind of bend them. I'm going to be doing this a lot. And this is just so I can feed it through. And this is so I can come in here, move this cable out of the way, feed it through. All right. And what I would do is just come here and kind of look at how your cables are going to lay. All right, guys, so the reason we do this is just so that that panel sits on there. I mean, if you had a see-through panel, you can make it a lot neater than this, but this is as far as I'm gonna go. All right, so guys, pretty much just gonna put it back together. And we're gonna look for our tab on here. This is gonna go towards the back of the computer. So let's flip that around, the back. We'll get this guy in there, slide it in. fits nice and snug. And we will get our screws on here. And that is cable management done. I would take a screwdriver and snug these up just a little bit so your case is good. And then of course put your fan filters back on. I'm going to keep dust out of the computer. That is the enemy and the bane of the existence of all computers. And that's what it looks like. Dun, dun, dun. We got the last piece. I think it's bad luck to put a computer together before you actually power test it. But hey, some people are superstitious. And there we go. We are back together. And then one last thing I will do is I'll power test it. I'm not going to do it on camera, but I'll power test it one last time just to make sure when I'm yanking on any of those wires, moving them around, nothing got popped around. Do a visual inspection through the case, maybe take a flashlight and make sure everything looks good, none of the wires look like they pulled away. Go ahead and power it up, and then you're ready to game. So guys, this was a Tech Nitwit video and Tech Nitwit Productions. I hope you liked the video. I hope this helped out a bunch of people. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you dislike, you know what to do. Sharing is caring, and I'm out, y'all.